Preparing for the next winter, the forest always changed its mind quietly. One morning, the leaves glowed gold like tiny lanterns. The next, the wind carried a sharper whisper through the branches. And deep inside, the oldest oak tree in the forest, a tiny black squirrel adjusted his oversized glasses and sighed dramatically at a single falling leaf. That, he seemed to think, is definitely a warning. The squirrel lived high above the forest floor in a small unfinished drey, tucked between twisting branches. It wasn't much yet, only a loose bowl of twigs, moss, and stubborn optimism. Winter was coming. And unfortunately, he was not ready. Every year, he promised himself he would prepare earlier. Every year, he got distracted. One autumn, he spent 3 weeks organizing acorns by size. Another year, he tried inventing a leaf-powered elevator. It failed immediately. This year, however, was different. This year, he had a plan. The squirrel pulled out a curled maple leaf covered in tiny scratch marks and paw-written diagrams. He studied it carefully, like a serious architect preparing for an impossible mission. Step 1. Collect stronger twigs. Step 2. Gather enough nuts for winter. Step 3. Build the greatest drey in squirrel history. Simple, at least in theory. The forest moved slowly around him as he began his work. Soft wind brushed through amber leaves. Mushrooms peeked from fallen logs. Tiny drops of morning dew clung to spider webs like crystal strings. The squirrel climbed branch after branch with determined little hops, carrying twigs twice his size while muttering silent complaints to himself. Some twigs were too crooked. Some were too heavy. One was somehow already occupied by a sleeping caterpillar. He politely returned that one. Hours passed peacefully. Then came the acorns. The squirrel's eyes widened behind his glasses as he discovered a hidden patch beneath a great oak tree. Acorns everywhere. Perfect golden acorns. Round acorns. Shiny acorns. The kind of acorns squirrels probably dreamed about. He gasped so dramatically that a nearby bird flew away in concern. Carefully, he gathered them into tiny piles.
That's a
Large
lot of
pile,
acorns.
medium pile, emergency pile, extremely emergency pile, and one very special acorn labelled, "Do not eat unless winter becomes emotionally difficult." Satisfied with his organization system, he carried the acorns back home one by one. Trip after trip, branch after branch. Tiny paws working endlessly beneath the fading autumn light. Days passed this way. The drey slowly transformed. Layered twigs strengthened the walls. Soft moss insulated the inside. Dry leaves formed a warm floor like a tiny woodland blanket. The squirrel even added a tiny window opening overlooking the forest valley. Very sophisticated, very unnecessary, but sophisticated. At night he sat at the entrance of his drey watching cold fog drift between the trees while distant owls echoed through the darkening woods. For the first time in many seasons, he felt prepared. But the forest was changing faster now. The wind no longer whispered. It howled. Leaves spiraled wildly through the air like golden rain. And somewhere deep beyond the hills, thunder rumbled. The squirrel froze. Thunder during late autumn only meant one thing. The first great storm was coming early. Suddenly, preparation became urgency. The tiny squirrel worked faster than ever before. He stuffed moss into cracks, reinforced weak branches, moved acorns indoors, moved them again, then reorganized them alphabetically for some reason. By sunset, exhausted and covered in leaves, he finally climbed into his completed drey. It was beautiful, warm, strong, safe. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the branches. Then harder, then violently. The entire forest shook beneath roaring wind. Branches bent dangerously. Trees groaned. The squirrel curled tightly inside his drey, adjusting his glasses nervously while listening to the storm rage through the darkness. But the drey held firm. No leaks, no cracks, no collapsing walls. The squirrel smiled proudly. He had done it. At last, he was ready for winter. Then, crack! A massive sound exploded above him. The squirrel's eyes widened. A huge branch snapped from the upper oak tree and crashed directly onto the roof of the drey. Everything went silent. Slowly, carefully, the squirrel peeked upward. The roof remained perfectly intact. Not even a single twig had moved. The squirrel blinked in disbelief. His ridiculous, over-engineered drey had actually survived. He sat proudly in the center of his tiny home while rain poured outside. A genius! An architect? A visionary? Then another sound appeared behind him. Tiny chewing noises. The squirrel slowly turned around. Inside the food storage corner sat a plump little field mouse, calmly eating the emergency acorns. The squirrel stared. The mouse stared back. Then the mouse pulled another acorn closer. The one labeled, "Do not eat unless winter becomes emotionally difficult." Silence filled the drey. The squirrel looked at the destroyed acorn pile, looked at the storm outside, then looked at the mouse again. And, strangely, instead of panicking, he laughed. A tiny, tired squirrel laugh. Because, after all the preparation, all the planning, all the careful organization, winter apparently had arrived with a roommate. Outside, the storm continued across the dark forest. But inside the tiny drey high in the old oak tree, two very small creatures sat quietly together while autumn faded into winter at last. Thank you for watching my videos. Please like and subscribe to support my channel. Stay tuned for more.